meetings of the Italian Association of Energy Economics.
Yeah.
Maybe this is the first time. Okay, so twice welcome. The subject of our session is current gas market dynamics. Oh, we have two speakers, so I think we have enough time for you to present at full length your paper, your considerations. And according to procedures, I should give some information based on your curriculum, but I would prefer maybe you present yourself so you can tell us your present status, your studies, your interest. So I would suggest that you start with, you present yourself, and then I would allow, but I think 20, 25 minutes, because we have two speakers, so 1 hour and a half. So I think we have enough time. So it's left to you. Then I will have some questions, maybe also Amina will have a question, and then we move to the second presentation. If you agree on this procedure, Selkat, it's not easy for me to pronounce, as the floor. Okay,
Okay.
please.
So thank you very much for the opening. So here is Şevkat Özgür from University of Vienna. I am a PhD student and research associate under the chair of Industry, Energy and Environment. So my research focus is about oil and gas investments, particularly mergers and acquisitions in the oil and gas industry. And today I will be presenting our working paper, which has a focus on upstream mergers and acquisitions with a case study of US upstream investments. And as my background, so I completed industrial engineering as bachelor and risk management and econometrics as master. And now I am continuing on my PhD studies at the University of Vienna. I have a bit of background in the oil and gas industry, also as a professional. And now I am more focused on my research. So if you are ready, I will start sharing my screen.
Perfect.
If you have any technical problems, just please let me know.
Yes, yes, perfect.
So let me see. Okay, can you see?
Yes, yes, perfectly.
Okay, I think it's, yeah, okay, great then. So at this working paper, we are trying to look for drivers of mergers and acquisition transaction in the US upstream oil and gas industry. And so oil and gas industry has an essential impact not only for US economy, but in like global economy.
Okay.
And even though today we are dealing with COVID pandemic and highly impacted, and the industry highly impacted and hit by the COVID pandemic and the future uncertainties, the industry and the international and domestic investment is very essential for the further development of the industry. So therefore, we believe that this paper would contribute to the literature and to the industry participant by looking for what happened in the last decades in the industry, what we can take as a lessons to further sufficient investments in the sector. To affirm in the oil and gas industry, and for instance, for upstream firms, replacement of reserves field recovery is considered as a key success factor for future growth. However, the attempts to explain oil and gas investments and underlying motivation and drivers face a challenge due to the complexity of the industry itself. This complexity comes from volatile commodity prices, geographical risk, high risks on the investments, long-term returns, and unexpected events and technological advancements. Previous literature has a giant research on mergers and acquisitions. However, academic studies, especially for extracting industry and oil and gas industry, are rare in the recent years. Based on this conclusion, we have a motivation to provide a broader view on upstream M&A transaction and its motivating facts by adding theoretical and industry-specific perspectives. And so let's start looking at the upstream transactions in most recent years in the M&A market. As we can see from the graph, these light blue parts are presenting the upstream transaction in global view. In the last years, upstream transactions are increasing in oil and gas markets. So the reason is for upstream attraction and attention could be based on challenges of reserves replacement, higher cost of debt, pressure for capital disciplines by investors, changing market condition, and technological advancements, especially in the US case. And the US is in the epicenter of global oil and gas M&A market. For instance, in the recent years, increasing domestic M&A transaction in the US. This could be caused by that recent years, the US is becoming from importer to exporter, increasing oil and gas productions, and also attracting cross-border and domestic transaction its own. So we are questioning what drives oil and gas mergers acquisitions in general, and which factors especially motivates the upstream oil and gas M&A transactions. As mentioned, that we will be looking for US market. So based on literature, M&A transactions in general are impacted by technological, regulatory, economical, and industrial changes or shocks. However, the literature concludes that the motives and underlying facts of mergers and acquisition can vary across different industries. In the oil and gas industry case, a distribution of the geographical risk, several skills, know-how in the industry, cost per operation unit, rising stock prices, volatile commodity prices, upcoming technological advancements, and changes of industry-specific indicators can make M&A strategy essential. And it's a very common applied inorganic growth strategy for oil and gas firms, because organic growth strategy can be even more costly than mergers and acquisitions. So we are concluding that M&A in the oil and gas sector, mainly driven by industry-specific indicators, sectoral changes, and political events. However, when we compare with the general findings of mergers and acquisitions, we find some inconclusive and heterogeneous findings. Therefore, we believe that industry-specific M&A studies and empirical evidence is necessary, and recent studies encourage further empirical demonstration for the oil and gas industry and M&A transactions. Here, I would like to share some key findings from some recent research in the field. When we look at the first study, this is a study based on US oil and gas mergers and transactions between 2004-2013, and their findings show that the most significant impact on mergers and acquisitions in terms of deal counts are the oil and gas production growth and oil price. However, capital market and stock market performance show no impact on mergers and acquisition deals in the US. In the second study, investigator research for Canadian oil and gas, Canadian upstream oil and gas transactions between 90s until 2008. And their findings says that reserves are negatively associated with takeover value. So which means that low reserves measure are associated with high takeover value, and oil price shown to cause takeover activity. At the same time, takeover activity shown to cause changes of natural gas prices. The third study is investigating between 2002 2014, only focused to Gulf Cooperation Council's mergers and acquisition, both domestic and cross-border transactions, and they don't find any significant relationship between economic measures and mergers and acquisition transactions. For example, GDP growth was one of the variables that they tested. On the other hand, higher governance, so institutional environment and cultural similarities between different countries attracts more mergers and acquisition transactions. So based on recent literature findings in the oil and gas industry, our contribution by this empirical research is aiming to assessing the association between the upstream mergers and acquisition transaction in terms of deal counts and deal value from the sector-specific macroeconomic, political, and technological changes perspective. And as addition to the previous studies, we would like to also add some sub-analysis for various patterns of upstream transactions. For instance, in our analysis, we are looking for asset versus corporate transactions in the US, and also grouping conventional and unconventional investment in the US. So how we do it is that we collect data from IHS Markit transaction database. The database offers global transactions in the oil and gas industry, particularly for upstream industry. More than 20,000 transactions happened during last 2 decades. However, we are framing for domestic upstream transactions across 11 regions in the UN. So our sample size is a bit more than 4,000 deals. And we are dividing into two main sub-analyses. One is based on count regression models for analysis based on M&A deal counts. And the second one is for analysis based on M&A deal value. Here I had to highlight, due to the deal disclosure and lack of information on some key indicators, sample size for M&A deal values are at 36% of the whole sample. So there we have a bit more than 2,000 deals that we can include in our empirical approach. Based on previous literature, we consider and expect association between oil and gas production growth, oil and natural gas prices, stock market performance as a proxy S&P 500 index price. And we also expect a relation between capital market liquidity. Therefore, we include as an independent variable interest rate spreads, which is a difference between commercial rates and federal fund rates. And in addition to that, we are also interested to test for whether shale revolution or Trump's election and administration had an impact on upstream oil and gas transactions in the US. So when we look at the development of US upstream transactions by deal count and value, we can see that quite volatile view on the M&A deal counts, and reacting to certain events for M&A deal counts. The trends show signs for concern on gaining asset ownership, asset reallocation, and combination, because as we can see that there are very rare, or comparing to asset transaction, much more less transaction in the corporate deals. Challenge of upstream industry or upstream transaction is that, which includes high financial risk with high return, very regulated industry impacted by global politics, and a high technology intensive industry. New drilling techniques in the US was presented with the shale revolution, horizontal drilling. So therefore we add after 2019, but actually we expect to see if there will be an impact. So we add the dummy variable shale revolution actually after 2011 and Trump's administration after 2017. So when we look at the development of the oil and gas price or oil and gas production over last 2 decades in the US, we can see a very volatile oil price, which was quite hiking till the financial crisis, but then after financial crisis, huge drop. And on the last 5 to 6 years, as we know that we all experienced the oil price fall. And in the oil and gas production sides, until 2009, so right after the financial crisis, oil production growth rates were actually negative. Same for natural gas production growth. And after 2009, they are hiking. But on the other hand, we again see some volatility in the last recent years. So when we look at the patterns of the transactions by primary segment, either it was conventional or unconventional, even though we see an increase on the red line, unconventional investments in the US after shale revolution. However, it's not that strong as we saw in the conventional ones in the first decade in our time frame. And when we look at the regions, most of the transactions are in the mid-continent, Gulf Coast onshore and Rocky Mountains. However, this is logical because those are the oil and gas producing regions and the fields in the US. But what is surprising, we would expect a much more stronger increasing unconventional investment for M&A market in the US. This is only can be seen in the mid-continent, Rocky Mountains, North regions. However, we would expect a much stronger increasing M&A deals in the north part, but this is not seen. But on the other hand, we have some mega deals in the north central and north slope. So when we come to our empirical evidence based on our regression analysis, I will start with when we had the dependent variable M&A deal counts. We have found that there is a negative and statistically significant association with interest rate spreads and oil and gas production growth. This is surprising because we would expect actually oil and gas production growth would have a positive impact with the mergers and acquisitions, but this is a surprising result that we found a negative. And for the oil price, there is a positive and statistically significant association, but we can't find any significant impact of natural gas price. Same for no significant impact of shale revolution or Trump's administration in terms of mergers and acquisition deal counts. However, even though the stock market performance does not show any significant impact, it's still pointing to positive side in the overall test. When we look at our sub-analysis based on M&A deal counts per asset versus corporate deals, we also find similar results with the deal count samples. So negative and significant association with interest rate spreads and oil and gas production growth, positive and significant impact of oil price. However, other variables show no significant impact. Only shale revolution has a negative and significant association with the corporate M&A deal counts. Because shale revolution actually triggers more investment in the asset deals. Dependent variable, when we take versus conventional versus unconventional, we see also a negative impact of interest rate spreads and oil and gas production growth, as well as shale revolution for conventional deals. And unconventional deals show positive and significant impact of oil prices. And Trump's administration has a positive impact because Trump's administration was changing whatever Obama built during his administration, and making extracting industry and drilling more attractive for US, and also taking out his place from Paris Agreement. Another surprising results from our analysis is that actually overall M&A deal value has no significant association with the independent variables. Only oil production growth has a negative impact on M&A deal value, and this is only valid for per asset and unconventional deals. Oil price has an association with M&A deal value with positively. However, this is only valid for asset M&A deal value. So I will shortly conclude without going more deep on the results, since they are just preliminary. But these preliminary results show that M&A transactions in the upstream industry actually requires broader perspective than common economic explanation. Study offers a specific sector focus. It's an extension study to the most recent analysis of the US mergers and acquisition. It shows some consistent findings, however, also very different results on the overall patterns than the previous studies, which requires further analysis and development on the research. And we can say that overall, politics and technological and industry specific changes has actually a limited effect. For instance, for Trump's election and administration, but however, we have to remind here that time frame is limited for just 3 years, and the real impact should be tested for further conclusive agreements later on. Shale revolution was expected to have a significant impact on the M&A market. On the other hand, our data shows that there is no significant impact except for corporate and conventional deals. It seems like US upstream oil and gas industry respond more to oil and gas production declines than to the heights. This is an asymmetric response to oil and gas production growth rate. And the analysis of deal value cannot capture any information, but this can be also caused by missing data, which limits us. So my critical reflection on this research and future work that we consider is that analysis only gives now a first insight to various patterns and influencing factors without the claim to be complete. Further analysis is definitely required. We consider to test the lagged effects of variables on another variable, which means that we would like to test for, let's say, for 1 year change. All the independent variables will be taken into account as a lag length of 1 year, that we would like to see that whether the market change from 1 year to another year is causing any changes on the flows of mergers and acquisitions or M&A deal value. Extension of the sample or collecting or merging information on M&A deal value is required. Maybe the results can be changed. And also our consideration to check rather than aggregated region level, conditions are driven better by specific regions. Another consideration for future research is the Paris Agreement, Trump versus Biden's administration and changes in future, and all climate change and future uncertainties and post-COVID-19 pandemic analysis could be interesting to see the M&A market in the US. So basically, I conclude now the presentation.
Thank you for your very interesting presentation.
Thank you very much.
My preliminary consideration and maybe question, if you can leave the last the slide with your conclusions, the previous one. Okay, no, critical, okay. Yes. So I think that very crucial will be, I agree with the last 2 points, the impact of Paris Agreement, the new policy of the new president, and the climate change uncertainties. I think
Yes.
that the study has been made on maybe on on a scenario that is going to change dramatically. So a dimension that I would consider is which will be the future role of natural gas in respect with oil. So maybe one motivation for mergers in the future will be the composition of the assets of one company. The company has more reserves of oil or more reserves of gas. So this could be an element of evaluation interesting, because if I look at the future, I don't see the traditional relationship between oil and gas. Oil it certainly is declining, and
Yes.
natural gas, although although natural gas still is under fire because of renewables, I think has a better future in terms of environment and new technologies. So this dimension will be more and more important, and we must consider that many oil companies are big oil companies. I make reference, for instance, to BP, are considering a strategic their long view on the future. So they are reviewing all the assets, try moving in this new philosophy. Maybe natural gas, natural gas will be more important. So mergers and acquisition maybe can be influenced by this new vision of the energy markets. So this is, of course, these are possible areas of deepening your research, and maybe could be interesting also to extend your research from the United States to a broader area. May be interesting, because the United States yes, is an important part of the energy scene, but has its own characteristics. Looking at Europe and the rest of the world, so the strategy of oil of companies located outside the, for instance, I make reference to the Italian company Eni is considering also wind. So maybe these are interesting dimensions. So if I don't know if there are questions for you from, if you can leave the close your sharing screen so I can look at the
Yes.
the information from the outside chat.
So
Okay, perfect. Okay, chat.
Yes.
No, it doesn't seem to have. So we move to the next presentation.
I actually have
We'll
a couple of words
to Amina.
go to my presentation if
Okay.
possible. I just wanted to
So
thank
a few words. You present yourself.
No, I just want to add to the Safkat's presentation.
Maybe I can.
Words.
No.
Is it okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
no better.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. My suggestion is that you present yourself and then you start with your presentation.
Yes, and just a couple of words to the first presenter because I really enjoyed and like.
No, keep
We can't hear you.
The micro.
Let me just talk without speakers.
Yeah, now better.
Yeah.
Okay.
So first of all, thank you so much. I really enjoyed your presentation because I'm very interested. Yeah.
No, it was better with the micro.
Yeah, Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Okay. Usually have problems. So how it is now?
Now it's good.
Now you keep the mic
Okay, I'm glad.
position, and then everything will be okay.
Okay, so just once more, thank you so much for your presentation, because I've been involved in the research of US oil and gas market for the past almost 2 years. But actually I studied methane leakages and methane emissions, so all that related to environmental concerns. But I really enjoyed your presentation because I'm quite weak in this topic, and I don't know a lot about this, and it was really nice to hear. Just a few adds, maybe it will help you in your future research, and you also mentioned it in your conclusion that there is some other factors, and you will have to look more deep in detail in your future, just a part of common economic sense. It's just because I just want to advise, make some advices, because I studied this theme from the technological prospect, and as an engineer, it will be very easy for you to study it as well. So first of all, I would, so why there was, so you showed us M&A during the shale revolution, and we saw that this is quite plain, but sometimes it goes up and down, up and down. And I just wanted to mention that it maybe not, but maybe yes. It may depend, first of all, on the well life cycle. Well, we drill the well.
Yes.
Like horizontal or vertical, that's how we extract oil and gas. And in shale, if we talk about shale oil and gas, the life cycle is no more than 2 years.
Yes.
It's 1 year and 1.5, and usually small companies, when they just take all the advantages and they take the most profit, they just go to bankruptcy and sell themselves. So that's why you can see this volatility. And also why there was not such effect, I think another reason was because I studied mostly natural gas in Permian Basin, where mostly all shale production is concentrated. There's no place where you can sell the associated gas. So there is no pipelines, no infrastructure. Yes. There is no business for natural gas there. So in other words, for example, in conventionals, you can produce oil and also sell natural gas. In somewhere in Permian, it's impossible. Your main business is only oil. And associated gas is just a kind of byproduct. They sell almost like zero to the pipeline where it is possible. But it's possible in like 10% of counting from the whole production. So that may be another problem. And just the one last thing, and I will start my presentation. As far as I know, in US and all this shale production and new rapidly changed oil production, all major companies, they already had, so before 2008, they had a lot of leases, land leases. So they bought the land, it's private in the US, and they didn't need to merge any companies.
Yes.
So probably some kind of this information will help you in future, I hope. So that's all. And
very good points. Thank you very much.
Oh, that's fine. Just a little bit, and I also don't know a lot of it, but I just try.
Because all this kind of related. That's why we don't see actually in the M&A market increasing shale oil and gas investments, because one part it was booming and growing, this new technology in the US, and which is only available in the US. But even in their domestic M&A market, it is not that strongly seen because of all these things that you mentioned, for example.
Sometimes they're not obvious.
Exactly.
Because I just studied the problem of this natural gas flaring.
That's why maybe it would be very nice to look at those regions where the shale oil and gas was booming, and to check there if the M&A market active or live there more, and how was it distributed over all the country. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you.
I will start share my screen, and simultaneously we'll introduce So I will. Yeah. Tell me if you see the presentation and it is okay. Yeah. Okay.
Perfect.
So my name is Amina Talipova. I'm originally from Uzbekistan, but for the past 5 years or almost 6 years, I've lived in Russia. I finished there my master's. My background both in bachelor and master's at petroleum economics. Then I transferred to the Higher School of Economics and started PhD in energy economics. I'm almost finished and almost defended my PhD, and just in several weeks, actually, I forgot to tell you that I'm greeting you from Houston. I'm currently here and it's around 2:30 a.m. in the morning. So it's not quite a morning for me, not yet. So in several weeks, I'm going to start here my postdoctoral, first year of my postdoctoral research at the University of Houston. And my main area of interest is natural gas, LNG, so all related to that. But when I was a PhD student, I've been studying Russian natural gas markets, both domestic and export. And of course, the main focus is Europe and the export to Europe. So my presentation is about this. Mainly the presentation is dedicated to exploring some evidence of fair trade in the European gas market with implication to the Russian gas export. So let me start. Okay. So let me just describe my motivation. First of all, oil and gas are two primary export sources for Russia. Talking about natural gas, almost 90% goes to Europe through pipelines, and Gazprom is a giant and has exclusive rights for export. It's very important to know because by law, nobody can export by pipeline the natural gas. So if it is not clear and very bad, so just tell me. I'll try to do something. Continuing. Since 2010, the company, the Gazprom, experienced several major antitrust lawsuits in European courts, which stated that the company seriously violated competition law. The colored countries that you see on the map are the ones where revisions and trials of the pricing Gazprom pricing took place. Overall, it cost the company more than $4 billion in so far, as of 2020. Undoubtedly, it makes all scientific and energy community concerned about the future of Russian gas in Europe and the energy security in Europe. It's not only about money or budget profit for Russia, but it is also about the reputation amidst all this uncertainty, volatile market conditions, especially when climate change and green energy are on the top of the list and are the top of the agenda. So from this evidence, I formed the following problem statement. Given the available data in the European gas market, can we prove or can we reject that after all disputes, Gazprom prices in Europe are fair finally and reflect mostly supply demand as company states, rather than fuel competition component? And under fuel competition, I mean oil, because the oil historically was the main fuel to which we switched from the natural gas. It means that if the prices converge more with the supply-demand motion on gas hubs, obviously, then the company is not a threat for a free market and can be considered as a fair player. Otherwise, it is still, if there is no convergence, so the company still overuses its dominating position and policymakers have really reason to be concerned. So that's the main point. As input data, I take 3 best European gas hubs, and specifically they had price history in dollars per megawatt hour. They are NCG, TTF, and Gazprom. It's just the basic logic why I choose these hubs and not somewhere for Italy, for example, or France or Belgium, because these hubs are the most liquid, they widely used for hedging, and geographically they coincide with Gazprom pipelines. the pipelines of Gazprom, they directly come to Germany or Poland from Russia through transit countries, of course. And additionally, to exclude cross-pricing bias, I added Brent spot in the analysis. I also added LNG, the most liquid prices in Spain, and Henry Hub prices in the USA, just to see if there were any connections, any logics. It's just for interest. LNG prices in Spain also followed by the logic, because the Spain is the larger importer of the LNG. And I want to see if there's any convergence with the LNG to prove that, for example, Gazprom's says a lot, so just a little bit out of the topic. Gazprom says a lot that it competes with LNG. It's not included in this research, in this my research. It's another which is still in progress, where I try to prove that Gazprom doesn't compete with LNG. But here I also included it in just in the model. Mainly I check for the pairwise convergence of the symmetric lower triangle matrix on the figure you can see for a total of 14 pairs of time series. Matrix element is based on qualitative analysis I gave previously. So for example, pipeline gas from Russia through the Nord Stream goes to Gazpool and NCG hubs just directly in Germany, and it's logical to pair them. So that's how I did all these pairs. And for before I go to the exact model specification, let me show 3 differences between my model and widely used by other researchers. Just 2 words about this model. It's a kind of very classical one. It is used widely since 1919, when the natural gas market in the US became very open and free with all these gas hubs. It's like 30 gas hubs in the USA today. So it's widely used in energy markets, in oil market, in natural gas, when some researchers try to explain maybe the convergence between oil prices and natural gas. So here I use only natural gas, and I try to use pipeline and prices on free markets. So first, it is widespread to transform, actually coming back to the point, to transform actual time series data. We usually use logs, some derivatives, first or second differences to avoid some non-stationarity problem. It's pretty simple. Instead, here I only take ratios of the current and time -1 data points, because I aim to save the positive and negative trends. So here is plus, the spread is plus, here the spread is minus. And actually they're equal to derivatives, so I also eliminate all these problems of non-stationarity. Additionally, different volatility across the series can give wrong results when transforming data with widely accepted method like first or second differences. Secondly, the output in all existing words only gives you one convergence coefficient, saying it is yes or no. So this is convergence or this is divergence. I want to trace not only this, but also dynamics and difference between several periods, and see where the convergence changes over the time. So for example, it allow me to conclude that yes, the price wasn't fair 5 years ago, it was the divergence, but it is close to the market price today and is quite convergence. So I want to know also this, and this my contribution probably, because there wasn't such modifications of the model in previous works. Finally, it's very common to normalize the outputs with some simple logic function and derive 1% number to demonstrate how much of all tasted data can be accepted and how much rejected. Instead, here I avoid the first and the second order errors and imply the so-called fuzzy logic function. It actually pretty looks like the same, but in the previous works, you will only see, so for example, 90% of data are accepted. I instead use 80% are totally accepted, then 10% probably yes or not, and 10% totally not. So that's the point. It's not difficult, but I think it reflects much more the full information of the results. So now about the model itself. It's based on a very simple logic that on one market, if it is fair, it is open and fair, the goods or commodity cannot be traded at different prices, because in this case, there is an arbitrage that logically makes the market imperfect and the price unfair. Mathematically, we test two time series for convergence. The classic definition in the equation 2 says that with a given information at a time, the limit of price differences tends to 0. It's also pretty simple. It is a very strict condition, and in reality, we rarely deal with such perfect data. Beside, in my case, so we are not tending to 0, and this is what we also change, and we limit to a constant or so-called alpha. So why in energy markets, and given with the fundamentals, they will never allow this condition to be satisfied? Because we have, for example, distance, and we have logistic components which are not so easily to derive from such integrated gas system as the European one. And in equation 1, you can see the general explanation of the time series, and I think that's also the main from this slide is that classical definition, it is tends to 0 in energy markets, and especially in gas or oil. It's absolutely impossible to satisfy this condition. So we set some significance level or some constant, which we test whether it converges at this constant, or at so-called alpha. So going to the next, this is probably the most important part of my work, because on this slide I just visually show the so-called time window. That's what I previously mentioned, that I wanted to trace different periods, so how the convergence happens and traces and changes over the time. So this window, I call it window. It's not a kind of official term, and you will never see it in other works. It is continuously expanding depending on time and number of observations, and it forms my final convergent function. In other words, I have 240 observations totally. I make 228 iterations, adding one by one new observation to understand how the convergence function tends to the critical values. So this is the main point. And it's very interesting. I didn't mention and didn't include it, the literature review, but there's one recent paper as of 2019 in the Energy Policy Journal, and it's quite very highly cited. Unfortunately, I'm very sorry, I don't remember the actual last names of the authors, but I'm preparing the paper where they are mentioned. So they explored the price convergence in natural gas hubs in Europe, and they mentioned that it is very important to include this time windows, or this varying, the change, but they didn't do it. So they changed it, they didn't do it, and that's probably, if my paper will be considered in a journal, I hope that I will make kind of critics of this work. But that's not about the topic, so let's continue. And here are the outputs and the main results. I have like much more than 2 pictures I will show here, but here are the main because of just the time limit. First of all, for all pairs, we observed a strict divergence from 2008 to 2014 years, and it steadily follows down after 2014. It's a very logically, and we can explain this because in Europe, a lot of laws about competition laws came into force exactly in that period of time. In 2011, 12, so starting from the first energy package and continuing with all this competition and antitrust laws, which really restricted the power of Gazprom. The time window used here is 1 year or 12 months. It indicates the active process of gas hub developing for us also, and not dependency of gas prices on other fuels, and mainly oil. For the rest of the period from 2015 and until now there is non-divergence hypothesis accepted. price non-divergence is accepted for both, here I used Czech and Latvia. This is 2 countries. It's just because I used Nord Stream prices and I used Yamal Europe, these 2 main pipelines of Gazprom, and only these 2 pipelines, because for others, data are not available and I couldn't find it. The non-divergence is accepted for this both 2 pipelines, which come mainly to these countries. Both countries show abruptly high divergence in the beginning of this year. I just thought it's very nice to include the impact of the COVID and the pandemic and impact on the prices. So while the non-divergence with Brent crude oil remains stable. So more interesting results. So here we also can explain, this is not so a big discussion here, but the most interesting is here. This is, I remain for the dessert. So most interesting results have been received for pairs with Nord Stream prices. This is the most recent pipeline constructed by Gazprom. It goes to Germany. There's a lot of discussion, and maybe you heard about a lot of disputes about Nord Stream 2 right now, whether it will be constructed or not. So as I'm a pro-free market person and researcher, I really want the European Union to take some logic, real, very nice assessment about this pipeline. So here the time window starts from the first 9 months, and I especially used this lag. I explained why. I used different ones. I started from 3 months and ended with 18 months, I'm sorry. And I found that the 9 months lag shows the most clear picture. And why? Because, so, historically, I will just tell a little information. Historically, Gazprom used to tie and to tie its long-term gas contracts only to oil, and with a lag of 9 months. It's just 9 months futures contract. So this is just a simple explanation, and this is proved in this model. So we also gain the same result. So I found out that implying 9 months lags shows more convergence picture than 12 months or 6 or 18 or 3, so wherever it is. And it proves and means that Gazprom indeed uses Brent benchmark still for gas pricing basing on this lag. It's not converged or non-diverged. So you can see it here, or for example here, it's not diverged with natural gas hubs. It's not, it means it's not converged with fair market price. It's just converged simply as it was 10 years ago, as it was 15 years ago. Gazprom used the same pricing and it still uses its position. So as I said, it points that Gazprom uses its market power in Eastern Europe and a little bit less in Western Europe, like in Germany or Netherlands, despite it guarantees competition in all gas hubs. So I already spent a lot of time. I will just make a very short conclusion. Gained results show that it's a kind of ambivalent picture. It's not clear. From one side, we cannot statistically accept the hypothesis of Gazprom and EU gas hub prices divergence. So somehow they are close to each other, especially after 2014, as they indicate a strong non-divergence. From another side, much stronger non-divergence is observed between Gazprom and Brent crude oil prices, and especially with 9 months lags, which demonstrates that there is a potential price, there will be potential price revisions in the near future. And in a worst scenario, it will be just, again, lawsuits, again, some disputes and conflicts between European community and the Russian gas giant. So I think, therefore, actually, I prepared initially all this work for Russian policymakers, and my main conclusion was that it is critical for Russia to review its gas export strategy, to liberalize it, to allow other gas exporters the access to the pipelines. And I still insist on this point. And especially I'm pro-liberalization of LNG export, because today there's also a lot of restrictions there. And I think that there is one of the main conclusions of my work. Another one, I think, sorry, it's also quite important, very nice and interesting, will be very useful for others, that this model can be very easily iterated, can be easily modeled and performed. And it would be very nice probably to use it for some fraud detection by forming this convergence function without human intelligence for energy security purposes, because it's not difficult. So that's all from me now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. And I will start with with a question. So first of all, I in agreement with you with the future for prices for Russian gas is a convergence. See, on this point, I fully agree. It's impossible to keep different prices in the world. So this is absolutely correct.
Yeah.
And as far as your study, you mentioned the relationship between Brent price and gas prices. So, in my view, this relationship maybe belongs to the past, because in the past times it was there was a tendency to consider these two the prices of these two fuels strictly linked. And I remember that the formulas for the contracts, the take or pay of all the years were based on Brent and some oil products like fuel oil, gas oil, and so on. Maybe this is something that has no more reason. First, because the markets are converging, as you say, and also because the markets for natural gas and for oil are completely different. Oil now is mostly used for transportation. Natural gas as for thermoelectric use and thermoelectric heating and industrial use and chemical. Maybe also in the transportation sector, gas can play a big role with the use of, for instance, of direct use of LNG. There are new technologies, very interesting. So maybe all this this changing world, changing scenario can be put in the model to understand, especially to interpret your results for the future. So so I think the competition. Anyway, a link between the gas and oil remains, but is deeply changed. So maybe, so I don't think that that the link with Brent is something that has special value. Maybe the study of different natural gas prices in the world, so that is a dimension that then can be interesting to compare the prices for natural gas. And also the prices of LNG that you are mentioned in your paper. And maybe I don't have seen.
I didn't include it. Yeah, yes, I didn't include it. I'm sorry. Just
because
I will just in 2 words.
The true competition to gas prices or gas produced in Russia will come from LNG. So rightly, this is in your paper is written that also. So I would suggest as further area of the link between natural gas, traditional, that's natural gas transported by pipeline and natural gas LNG, to see the this dimension of convergence between the two markets. So these are my observations that, of course, this is an appreciation of your study. So I just give you my personal idea how to go on. And maybe the what in your graphs I noticed the period of not convergence with the during COVID. Maybe this I don't know why what happened, because maybe the prices were used all the formulas and the prices had the collapse.
It's just so one. The first explanation is which seemed to us very simple and logical. It's just because nobody expected. You remember this March and April, just a dramatic drop of the oil prices and natural gas prices. Yes, there was some expectations. So there was a big difference. So they started to diverge with each other, because from one side, oil prices dramatically dropped. But at the same time, natural gas prices didn't drop so dramatically for the first month of the COVID, because there were a lot of purchases, especially in Europe, and they tried to storage it in the underground and gas storage. There were a lot of purchases and a lot of imports in Europe, so the prices were not close to zero like there was with oil. So I think there's it can be explained by just the fundamental difference between, as you mentioned, the oil and natural gas. Because Europe anyways need the natural gas in winter, while when we are locked down and stay at home, we do not need to go somewhere by car or by bus, so we do not need the gasoline. So that's a kind of very simple
answer. In this sense, we can say that the events of this year have shown that while oil has suffered terribly from the COVID, natural gas has survived much better, because natural gas is used in homes for electricity production and so on. So this makes the difference between the use of the two fuels. It's much more important for the future.
Yeah, and just 2 words also about motivation, and now I understand that I need to include them all. So why actually this paper saw the light and appeared? Gazprom for the past 3 years, very often, every time somewhere in Europe on investment days and on big forums somewhere in Davos, usually says that right now it's long-term contracts, gas contracts, all have been revised. So all prices have been revised, and they're talking a lot that, oh, we are moving towards the fair prices, we are moving towards spot prices, we are moving towards a stronger linkage to the natural gas hubs. And I just decided, so why not to test it? So maybe something happened, maybe it's really true. And I just use the database of European Union. I use the NSOC. This is all this pipeline database. So at what price and where, to which part of the Europe Russian pipeline gas comes. So I just simply tested it, and it turned out that Gazprom tells more than it does, actually. And its long-term contracts are not even if you open some official statements of Gazprom, now it says that more than 50% of all long-term contracts are not related and linked to the oil right now. But it seems that it's much more than 50% are still tied to oil. So it seems sometimes he lies. And because otherwise we haven't been seeing such a clear picture of the convergence with the Brent crude oil, if there would be more than 50% of revisions and linkage to the gas hubs. So that's what the point and why this paper really appeared, actually.
Yes, yes,
yes, that's all. And thank you. I will really think about your suggestion, and especially about the dimensions and the prices for natural gas different in terms of LNG or the pipeline and in different regions. I think that this is one of the promising today area of research, and yeah, it would definitely worth to concentrate on it.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
I ask you both, since I have only the abstract, maybe you can send the full the presentation.
With a pleasure. Yes,
okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Fine. Questions from
Shevkat. Thank you very much. Very interesting presentation. And I would be also definitely interested to read the full paper. What comes to my mind is just like to maybe could help to your interpretation of this paper, or I don't know if you are still like in the writing stage, to definitely to test more for LNG prices also, just to see if there is the strong relation with the oil price for LNG as well. And another interesting thing is just to interpret, to mention about the COVID time, is that even though the gas storage is quite expensive for to store natural gas, it was still it still happened during COVID.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, and this is, as Mr. Vittorio mentioned, basically comes from the end use of these two products in, in Europe. So this is, I think, worth to mention in the paper as an.
Yeah, I don't have it really. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I don't have it. Yes.
Okay.
And this is very excellent point, actually. Yeah. Even I missed it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. I would really be glad to send you, and probably if you need some information and I can help with something, you're really more than welcome to contact me. I would really very glad.
Maybe I can inform you that at the Italian Association of Energy Economics, we have a group of people following the market developments.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we can change information if you want to write something on this item of the gas prices. Yes, you are, maybe we can stay in touch. In fact, we are trying to to find a model to make a forecast of the price on the TTF. Because we in the past we had developed a system to evaluate the gas prices based on the old take or pay contracts. But now we consider this, we still make a projection on those prices, but we think that now the market is more, the most important market is the price exchange at the European hubs. So we would like to make new methods to forecast these prices. Of course, including the prices of fuels like fuel oil, but maybe more important will be the demand of natural gas, which in this the natural gas is until few years ago seemed very important. Now the European level, everything talks of renewables. I have some doubts on the possibility. Anyway, this is a challenge for the industry, because of course the investments and so on who will invest on natural gas if everything is based on renewables? But this is true or not? But I have some doubts. I still I have faith on the role of natural gas. This is my personal view.
Yeah, let me assume a lot of talks about the hydrogen.
Oh,
so
terrible,
this is a kind of
terrible.
like a fire, like a fireball. All this
I can
hydrogen.
tell you something which is out of the out of records. I consider hydrogen like a giant reservoir of money. A lot of people is trying to make the holes to extract the money, but the practical contribution on the energy balance is still to be seen. But this is out of records. I said nothing.
No, you're right. It's just the common sense. I mean, it's just the common sense.
And also, until the complete transition will happen, it will take years and years. So definitely liquefied natural gas, and natural gas has to be
yes.
on the market. We need it.
No, in fact, the real transition is natural gas, and then natural gas with the renewables. This is the real transition in terms industrial feasible. The other things are, propaganda a lot.
Yes.
So I think it's important, in fact, to make the real transition, because the facts are that hydrocarbons are still very important. So we cannot, discuss only theoretically. We must look at the figures, and the natural gas can really contribute to this evolution.
And just
one add to say, I have personally, I have a little photovoltaic plant on my house, so I am not against the renewables. I am in favor of renewables, conservation, but looking at the facts, not okay.
I just wanted to share with you with this nice conversation. You talked about the real transition, real energy transition, and I absolutely agree. And one brilliant example, I think, when I studied, it was a kind of my fellowship in the US, and I studied the problem of methane leakages and emissions. And maybe you heard that in California, it was very popular to ban natural gas. Mm-hmm. So all households now, they only have electricity. They do not have natural gas. And if you ever will travel or traveled across the border between Nevada state and California state, you will see that just on the cross border of the Nevada and California, there's just like 10 or 15 major power plants. So what they just simply did, Californians, I mean, they banned natural gas. So all this power station, which burns natural gas, they just moved from California to Nevada, and now they just importing not natural gas. California, they're importing electricity, but this electricity comes from natural gas.
That's the point with also electronic cars. Still the main fuel comes from crude oil or natural gas. All these power plants are driven by natural gas power plants. Yeah.
So where we save the climate, where we fight against the climate change, I don't see actually. So you're absolutely right, Vittorio, about this real figures.
Your screen. Switch off your screen. The sharing.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
So we check if there are.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
participants, the number has increased, but I don't see question and answer. That's not, no open
It's
question.
because the morning.
Okay. So maybe if there are no questions from the floor, I think that we can close this this interesting session. Maybe.
Indeed.
Just a question. You are from in this case. You are located where?
Me? You're the first.
You are located in this moment where? In which country?
I am in Vienna, Austria,
Yes.
Vienna.
And I asked
Amina.
Amina.
So I have just been arrived in Houston, and as I told, in a month I will have the defendants of my PhD, but it will be online in Russia, because as I'm not a citizen of Russia, I'm not allowed even to enter Russia. So my university will hold my defense.
So in this moment,
but right now I'm in Houston, yes, because I'm starting here my first year of postdoctoral research. And I will work with a kind of great professional and professor which specializes on natural gas and LNG. So that's my topic, and I'm continuing it. So I will definitely be glad to join your group's research and Sevkat if you.
Sure.
If you'd like, I'm really open to collaboration.
Yeah, that's
what
I'm thinking. Maybe we can produce something together, even on natural gas and liquefied gas investments.
I'm just for any collaboration.
Because, I will be in touch, definitely, at your contacts.
Yeah, for sure.
This
And
would
very
be
nice.
a very interesting outcome of this session. New ideas, a new way of working together. Okay. So you have
Thank you very much for your comments, for your chair. It was very nice.
Compliments for your study and studies and your interest for the matter. And I wish you the best, and we stay in touch. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
you so much.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Have a good day.
Yeah. Have a good day. Nice Christmas.
Okay.
Yeah. Bye bye.
We say ciao.
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 Ciao.